You are listening to Azerbaijani Odlar Yurdu at 102.7 FM co-op radio station from Vancouver. My name is Ayub Hajiev and I'll be your host for today. Over the last year, we have been trying to highlight issues and the problems that Azerbaijani communities face in different countries. We have many times discussed racism and discrimination against Azerbaijanis as well as other ethnic minorities in Iran. Today, we're going to explore another issue related to Iranian Azerbaijanis. We will discuss the issue of identity, self-determination, and the culture from the perspective of one young Azeri who immigrated to US as a 4-year-old boy. His name is Farzin Farzad. He's a 27-year-old Azerbaijani Iranian living in the US. Farzin has a very interesting life journey associated with being Iranian, Azerbaijani, as well as American all at the same time. I asked Farzin many questions related to discovery of his own identity and culture. And the issue with Farzin is not the single only one. There are many other Azeris who immigrate to Western countries and face similar problems. That's why I think it's going to be very interesting to our listeners. First, and I invite you to listen.
All right, Farzin. First thing, I just want to thank you for agreeing to participate in this interview with Odlar Yurdu radio station. What we have been doing until now, trying to highlight issues of Azerbaijanis, both in south of the border in Iranian Azerbaijan, also in north of the border, Republic of Azerbaijan. And there are specific issues related to both sides. And one of the issues that people in the south experience, it's the identity issue, finding themselves, being Azerbaijani, being at the same time Iranian, and how we really want to know how does that affect people? How does it affect their life and life journey? The reason we wanted to talk to you because of the special background. You were born in South Azerbaijan in Iran, but you grew up in North America, particularly in US. So to us, it's very interesting to learn about your life journey. So can you just tell to our audience, our listeners, about your background, your child born, where did you grow up, and how your experience?
Sure. Well, first off, I'd like to say it's an honor to be able to speak to you guys today, and I'm really pleased that you chose to talk to me. Well, I was born in the city of Urmia in South Azerbaijan, Iranian Azerbaijan, and I came to the United States when I was 5 years old, and that was towards the tail end of the Iran-Iraq War. Mm-hmm. My family kind of thought it was a little bit unsafe for us to be there, and so we went through Turkey to Washington, D.C., and my dad had already been living here for about 4 years. He came when I was 1 to kind of set up a life for us. But yeah, I grew up in the U.S. I started elementary school around the D.C. area when I was 5. Grew up around here, kind of got a westernized education, still with our values, from home, Azerbaijani values. I still grew up with those because my family was pretty adamant about keeping the tradition. Mm-hmm. I retained my language skills to a certain extent. Forgot a lot of it over the years, but I kept the majority of it. And now that I'm working again with a lot of Azerbaijani issues, it's kind of coming back to me. But I went to school, undergrad, at McDaniel College, studied political science. Minored in international studies and art history. Mm-hmm. I went, and I got, when I was doing my bachelor's, my thesis paper in my bachelor's was, the Iranian nuclear issue and its effect on the Middle East. I did a little bit of work here and there in the D.C. area, did some internships, went to grad school for international affairs, concentrating on the Middle East. Iran was my focus. And once I did that, I continued on little, through to ADAP, and I worked with Sakta for about 3 months at a fellowship in Vancouver.
You mean a session for defense of Azerbaijani political prisoners in Iran? Yeah.
Right. In the summer of 2009, I found a fellowship online, and it was for the Association for the Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners in Iran, ADAP. They're based in Vancouver. I went and worked there for 3 months, came back here to DC, and gradually tried to establish our presence here. So I've been doing a lot of work with that here in DC, and hopefully we can. I'm trying to get that up and running, and try and get some South Azeris here more active. Mm-hmm. So I've pretty much had a Western education and grown up here, and I've never really had the opportunity to travel back to Iran, to South Azerbaijan.
So, Farzin, you just talked about your background history. Tell me, that while you're growing, were you growing up like Azeri, Iranian, Persian, or American? How did you? What did you feel about your identity?
Well, of course. I mean, I was immersed in American culture, and growing up, it was a little bit difficult for me because of my name, and I spoke a different language, and going to school, it was a little bit hard for me to adjust. But for the most part, the way I grew up, I understood that I was from Iran. I understood that I was part of this Iranian group, but I always questioned it because my parents never really taught me Persian, Farsi. So I kind of grew up speaking Azerbaijani, but it was always that I always knew that we were a little bit different from Persians, that we weren't completely in that group. I always grew up with the idea that we were a Persian group that spoke a different language, and that's kind of how people in our situation are grown up to believe. But growing up, when I was going to a lot of the cultural events, the Persian Nowruz celebrations, the Yalda celebration, things like that, and the way I interacted with people, I always felt myself a little bit different. I had different customs. My family taught me different mannerisms than what I was seeing expressed in other people, and that always struck a chord with me. And the dances didn't really I mean, I don't want to say if it's good or bad or anything, but it didn't really fit in my head I should be doing these. I always thought myself a little bit different. So I didn't completely understand why we were different. I knew that we were part of a group called Azerbaijanis, but I didn't really understand. I didn't understand what that meant. My father would mention that we are a Turkic group, but I always grew up with the idea that we're all Persian and we speak a Turkish language, and that's why we're considered that. And for the most part, it was that way. I mean, my family was fairly nationalistic, but didn't put those ideas in my head. I kind of developed them in my own the discovery of my own self. So, but I always knew that I was a little bit different, and I didn't follow the customs, and my family didn't do the same either.
So
I did the same too. They were a little bit different.
So when did you come to realize that you were Azerbaijani Turk? When did you actually understand your own identity, Azerbaijani Turkic identity?
Well, actually, it wasn't until a chance that I got to college and graduate school that I researched Azerbaijanis more so, and I began to realize the history and the fact that the nation was split during the Turko-Persian or the Russo-Persian Wars between then Russia and the Persian Empire in the 19th century. And then I realized, we there is a separate group of Azerbaijanis that now have their own country and are able to learn their language. And there's and us Iranian Azerbaijanis are in the south. I had no idea how large of a group we were until I started doing my own research. And it didn't really click to that degree also until I actually started working with Adat. Because there's also not a lot of information on the internet at that time, like, in the early 2000s, about Azerbaijani. So back then it was just few and far between. I was piecing together what was going on. Like, my father could explain a little bit of our history, but then again, like, a lot of what he learned was also distorted from nationalist Persian books, historical books when he was growing up. So it was a very gradual process, and honestly, up until like last year was like the year that it solidified my my knowledge of like exactly our history, or exactly like who I am. So it was a slow process. It happened mostly in college and grad school.
And how did it feel? How did it feel to realize who you are? I mean, your identity. Was it hard process to go through?
No, it wasn't a hard process. It made me feel more comfortable about myself. Like, yes, I am different, and yes, we are a different group, and we, for example, Azerbaijanis do things that are different than Persians. Like, we don't really do ta'aruf. We don't like do the kind of playful exaggeration and dialogue that Persians do, and things like that. And those things that, like, growing up didn't make sense in my head as to why people were doing this, because I'd never seen it before, not in my family. They all started to make sense. And it was more of a kind of like I don't want to say a relief, but it was more like I felt more comfortable in myself, and I felt more comfortable around other ethnic groups, because, I could seriously say, oh, I'm from the Azerbaijani minority of Iran. So it wasn't more like a confusing thing. It was more like, all right, now I know who I am. Now I know. It was a good feeling, actually. A very good feeling.
This is Azerbaijani.
Yeah. And do you think that you are alone on this, or because what I've heard that like many others have the same issue, Azerbaijanis in the south. Have you seen other Azerbaijanis going through the same process in your life, or?
No, actually, not really. Like unfortunately, well, I mean, a lot of the people that I know around here, they side mostly. They do a lot more Persian activities, and they still do identify themselves as Persian, which I mean, it's up to them to decide who they are, to associate themselves in what direction. But to the kind of life discovery that I went through, I haven't seen it in anybody else. I've heard people talk about how, like, they are Azerbaijani. They're very nationalistic, especially people from the city of Tabriz. I mean, very famous for highly nationalistic Azerbaijanis, but nothing like I've never heard of anything like the self-discovery that I did. And, I would love to meet somebody that has had the same experience, but unfortunately, no.
Okay. But the ones that never self-discover, do you think they always, because you have gone through this process, do you think they always feel they're different, they don't completely belong to Persian culture, or they try to ignore that part and just go along with that?
Well, all right, here's where it gets a little complicated.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the ones, I mean, there could be various reasons. I mean, one could be that, like, they truly believe that they're Persian and they speak another language, and they're a separate language that, they like, it was something that, for example, the history is, according to them, that 1,000 years ago, Turkic tribes came, changed the language, and somehow retreated and changed these Persian groups, and then, like, they spoke Turkish, and then they're fine with it. They don't feel ashamed of it. They just don't associate themselves with Azerbaijanis of the north, or with the Turkic groups, other Turkic groups. That's one explanation. Another thing is, I believe there's a certain degree of, like, fear and embarrassment that goes along with being South Azeri. So it's very difficult for somebody that has grown up with the notion that being an ethnic minority is a bad thing, which is very true in Iran. Racism is institutionalized, and even the groups that have migrated here to the U.S. still retain that sense of high nationalism, high Persian nationalism that people grew up during the Shah regime learned that. They brought it here. That they've instilled that knowledge on their kids, and it's very like kind of taboo to say you're from an ethnic minority. So the people that are of my generation grew up with that as well, even in the United States, even in one of the most open countries on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's from my gathering, when I talk to some South Azerbaijanis that still retain the Persian nationalism element, they become kind of offended. Like they seem like they have to like defend the Persian national sentiment, not because it's what they truly believe, but because they're embarrassed, because they know that there's somebody out there that's going to shun them, a Persian out there maybe, that's going to shun them for that kind of thinking. And this is what I've personally understood. I mean, it may not be this way at all, but this is my feeling interacting with other South Azeris, and it's to some degree, it's very visible. Like, for example, like they will rush to defend the Persian ideals before they do their own, before they realize, hey, like, you're offending me. It's not that. So I wish that, I wish it weren't true, and I wish that there was this like more of less fear in saying that you are who you are.
Yeah.
Among these groups.
So, do you think there's a need to change something within Iran, within the Azerbaijani community, so they will stand up for their language, cultural rights? How do you see a future perspective on this?
Of course. No group in Iran right now is in, except for the ruling party, no group in Iran is in a good place with anything. So there needs to be change in all fronts. And for the Azerbaijani community, first off, it really helps to identify yourself as Azerbaijani. That's the main thing. That's the most important thing. To kind of still keep this like hatred, this distaste with ethnic minority, being an ethnic minority. You kind of have to, give that up, let go, accept it. You're Azerbaijani. You come from a very good stock. Like different ethnic minorities are the same way. They come from great stock. They come from great history. So the fact to self-identify is the biggest thing, and that's slowly grasping hold in South Azerbaijan, and I think it's a great thing. Now, once that happens, it becomes much easier, I think, to kind of stand up and fight for your rights. And I'm not necessarily saying literally fight, but
of course,
kind of defend yourself at least verbally. So I think that the main thing right now that we're seeing slowly, I think it has accelerated a lot more so in the past few years with growing distrust of the regime, is to actually realize that, okay, well, we're from a different ethnic group than the dominant Persians. We have a different culture. We have a different language. It's threatened. Let's try and change that.
Okay.
So I think once that happens, it would be much easier to form the different political parties, the different groups that you can band together and eventually try and change things from the down-up level, from internally. So it's a long. The process of change is long, is extended, and nobody expects something overnight. But the fact that the groups in Iran, and not only Azerbaijanis, different groups like the Baluchis, the Kurds, the Ahwazi Arabs, the Turkmen, and among others, they are also developing these kind of ideas of self-identification, and I think it's more of a good thing than it is a bad thing. The way different Persian nationalists will have you believe, they think that it'll cause the breakup of Iran. It's very detrimental to the region. I think that the past 80 years has been very detrimental to the fact that like languages and cultures have been actively by the government tried to be suppressed and destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this is slowly happening, I think, is the first big step. So, but
Okay.
it's a long process again, and self-identification is step one.
We had a interview with Dr. Reza Barahani. What he was thinking actually, he mentioned something, I can't quote exactly, but he said that Iran either will become democratic, allow the rights to all, give the rights to all nations, or will fall apart. So I'm just telling from whatever he was thinking. So do you agree with that?
I think he's absolutely right. I think the way the current system is set up, it's forcing the groups to become more and more franchised. First off, and that in turn kind of makes it much easier to look inward and then want to completely cut off ties with the country of Iran altogether. Okay. So I think that the process now, and the majority of that is the highly nationalistic groups in control and in power right now, limiting freedoms. Mm-hmm. So of course, like when you cage an animal, it reacts. It wants to break up, right?
Yeah.
So this is what's. In certain terms, this is exactly what's happening. And I think Dr. Barahani is absolutely correct. Unless there's some sort of positive change for freedom, for the opportunity of these groups to express themselves verbally, culturally, then Iran, I believe, will fall apart because it will become the Soviet Union. It will become what happened after the fall of communism. These groups separated. They wanted nothing to do with the USSR. And of course, history is a little bit different on both ends, but still, I truly believe that will happen because when people say, I've heard different people that have been interviewed be asked, are you a separatist? Mm-hmm. For example, some Azeris in interviews are asked this question because of, because they're supporting the rights of South Azerbaijan. And then their responses generally, which is, I think, brilliant, they usually say, no, I'm not a separatist. The Persian nationalists are the separatists. Mm-hmm. They're the ones forcing these groups to do what they're doing, to look inward, to band together, to develop these ideas of separatism. So I think that if without an active political system that allows for pluralism, that allows for exchange of ideas, that allows for the opportunity for different groups to express who they are, and practice their culture, practice their language. It's Iran. I believe he's right. Iran will fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Farzin, and this summer I'll be spending 3 months in Vancouver, Canada, working for the Association for the Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners in Iran. This is a group that's committed to exposing the endemic racism that exists within Iranian society, particularly against the Azerbaijani community. Now, even though this community comprises roughly 25 to 30% of the entire population of Iran, they're barred from speaking their language in public forums and learning their native tongues in schools. And anyone who struggles to expose this is arrested and sometimes tortured and killed. So my goal this summer is to expose these Azerbaijani prisoners of conscience so that their struggle does not go in vain. Before any real advocacy and action is to be taken, the Western world must first recognize that this problem actually exists. So that is why I'm asking all of you who are following my blog so far to spread my blog to your family and friends and to Google South Azerbaijan and political prisoners in Iran and to help spread my message. So hopefully in the end result we could see an Iranian government that recognizes the beauty and necessity of its various cultures and languages and to preserve its various cultures and languages.
All right. Thanks for that. Farzin, tell me about your experience with ADAP, Association for Defense of Azerbaijani Political Prisoners in Iran. You just mentioned that you found the advertisement on newspaper, you applied, and tell me about your experience. What do you think? How was it?
Sure. At the time, ADAP had a partnership with the Advocacy Project, and the Advocacy Project is a very good group. I suggest everyone in your listening audience kind of take a look. It's advocacyproject.org. They allow for graduate fellows to go and kind of serve in these NGOs that are not very well known throughout the world, and basically they give a voice to the voiceless is their slogan. But at the time, ADAP had partnered with Advocacy Project, and they were sponsoring a fellowship last summer, and I applied and I became the fellow, which was really interesting because I had never seen anything about Iranians in Azerbaijan before that. Like, I just read a couple bits of history, and that was it. And then to find this like fellowship that was focused on this issue, like, it blew my mind. So I immediately applied. And this was after I graduated from graduate school. And I went there for about 3 months last summer, was a fellow. I vlogged, video logged, and I kind of like helped with the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and tried to get everything out as much as I could. And this was right around the time the Iranian elections were going on. And, my blog kind of gained a little bit of popularity because it was showing this alternate view from what you were seeing throughout the Western media. Like, you were saying that, entire Iran is all Persian, and they're all going up against the government. And then I was arguing, you know what, that's only in the central cities of Iran. If you look at the other cities around the outskirts where the majority of the different ethnic minority groups are, that wasn't the case. They were kind of keeping quiet because they didn't feel like they were involved with this whole green movement. It was highly Persian-centric, highly nationalistic.
But the head of green movement, Mousavi, was Azerbaijani himself.
Yeah, that's true, but he never, ever speaks for the rights of South Azeris. Okay. And that's a popular thing. Like, the Persian nationalists would say that, well, he's Azerbaijani, what more do you want? But he doesn't fight for the rights of Azerbaijanis. He knows the language, but he has to adapt to the dominant culture, adapt to the groundwork that's set out by 80 years of Persian domination, Persian, kind of, what I want to say, like the groundwork, the language, the culture. You have to adapt to that culture in order to get anywhere. So he's one of them. He will go to the Azerbaijani cities and tout, long live Azerbaijan, but not once will he ever lift a finger for the South Azerbaijani issue. Same with other prominent Azerbaijanis.
Is it the reason that he didn't get much support? Tabriz, for example, didn't give much support for green movement.
There is a couple things. I mean, of course, Mousavi has a long history in Iran, and people know that. He was, there during, like, right after the revolution. He was kind of Khomeini's, like, little, like, play toy, I guess I want to say. He was very, Khomeini favored him a lot. And when he ran for president, he tried to kind of, like, reinvent himself. But, like, the majority of the Iranian population kind of knew who he was, but it was more of a, anything is better than Ahmadinejad kind of thing. But, I mean, yeah, exactly. Okay. But the thing is, like, the people of South Azerbaijan, they knew that. Plus, there was the element of, well, he is South Azeri, but what are you doing for us? Nothing. You're not doing anything. You're not lifting a finger for us. So he didn't get much support, and we don't know actually how much because, of course, the data was skewed when it came out from the elections. So, but I mean, like he could. I've actually heard a few people call him the son of Azerbaijan, which is absolutely ridiculous to me. Because I mean, he doesn't do anything for Azerbaijan. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I kind of went off the topic. So you were talking about your blog, your work with ADAP, and I started asking questions related to Iranian politics. So what happened at the end of your internship with ADAP? Any significant achievement?
Okay.
Yeah.
So so actually my blog got a lot of hits, and what's really funny was that there was a few Persian nationals that would write and try and discredit everything I said, even if it was like completely rational and not accusatory at all. Like I would say, for example, like I would write a blog post about rights, and this person has been in prison for this and this, and they would try and through very, very intricate ways of pulling up history, this skewed, distorted history, to say, what, you're wrong. Kurds did this, Turks did that back in the day, and
Yeah.
So like there was a lot of these Persian groups that came on and tried to discredit me and say, I'm a separatist. All I'm saying is everything that I'm saying is going to break up Iran, and it's bad for the country and all this and that. But no, like I had a very rational view of everything. I tried not to accuse any group at all. I tried to keep it very civil. Even then, it was that. So like because of these exchanges, I got a lot of hits, and I think part of it was that not a lot of South Azeris had seen somebody so vigilantly defend South Azerbaijanis and their rights online before. So I think it became quite popular. I finished up in about late August of 2009, came back to D.C. and continued my work with ADAP, writing some articles and editing a lot and trying to kind of get our stuff out to the D.C. audience. But things have slowed down a little bit, unfortunately. But, I'm hoping to kind of regroup and kind of be a driving force in this region, in this area, for the South Azeri issue.
So what do you think about ADAP? Is it a separatist organization?
Of course not. Not in the least. It is actually the furthest from that. And the executive director, Fafa Zamani, she's adamantly said to me, like, it's completely not in the mission, and it's not. Even if it was, it's not ADAP's place.
Okay.
It's not a separatist organization, but it's not ADAP's place to kind of discuss politics. It's a group to defend those that are receiving no type of defense in South Azerbaijan because of the South Azeris. So nobody's fighting for these people except ADAP.
Why don't they fight? There are many Iranian human rights organizations. I'm not saying that inside Iran, but outside there are many. Don't they care about when Azerbaijanis get arrested?
Well, there are a lot of NGOs that have popped up representing Iranians that are political prisoners that have been arrested for being prisoners of conscience and things like that, arrested for political activity. The ones that have been arrested for kind of expressing the rights, expressing the fact that we need language and cultural rights in Iran. Nobody pays attention to them because they think that these people are separatists. They deserve to go to jail in their eyes. So ADAP is there to kind of pick up for that. Now, if there were, like, for example, Human Rights Watch or other groups, which, it's a Western NGO, but still doesn't represent these people, or if the other NGOs, Iranian NGOs, took up for this and like, kind of started representing the South Azeris, representing the Kurds, representing the Baluchis, the Ahwazis, everybody that's kind of out there for their own, have been expressing their own language and cultural rights, then groups like ADAP wouldn't need to exist.
Mhm.
But the fact that nobody else is doing it makes ADAP a necessary tool. So, but it's not a political organization at all. A registered nonprofit in Canada. It doesn't accept any kind of political donations. It is not a political organization. It is strictly there for the defense of those Azerbaijanis that are fighting for their rights.
Okay. Thanks, Farzin. That was actually very interesting talk and information. So, what about future plans? Going back to your own, future plans. Where do you see yourself in 3 years? Are you part of Azerbaijani community now?
I am. I'm very entrenched in the Azerbaijani community now, and I've done a lot of work with a group here called the Karabakh Foundation, which promotes the culture and arts and heritage of Azerbaijan in the DC area in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing a lot of. I'm actually the program manager there, and I've been doing a lot of work with the programs. The art exhibits we're putting out, the cultural nights, the holiday. We had a holiday dinner. We have a radio show that we're sponsoring, and things like that. And it's all cultural. It's all 100% about the cultural heritage of Azerbaijan. Mm-hmm. So I've been because of that. I've been very involved in Azerbaijani culture and kind of been very deeply entrenched in the community here. But of course, there's still the issue of South Azerbaijan that still is in my heart, and I will continue to work on, as long as there are problems there. But my future plans is that I'm hoping that in the United States, with with my help and with kind of grouping together some people here, that we can kind of make it easier for Azerbaijanis to here in the United States to self-identify, to get involved in Azerbaijani groups without the taboo of being an ethnic minority from Iran or worrying about that. So I kind of want to help to lay the pathwork for groups to pop up and formulate my own group here, possibly to kind of involve both North and South Azerbaijanis in culture, in human rights, and things like that. Mm-hmm. So my plans are kind of vague at this point and a little bit all over the place. But if anything, I want to give to my community, and I hope to.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
No need to thank me. I feel like it's my duty. So.
Yeah. All right then. So I wish you lots of luck in your work and in your endeavors. And it was great talking to you.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.